is an honor for me.
It is an honor for me
to have a part to play. In a historic movement. That began not very far from here. And shows to the whole world that it might take longer in the United States. But we too can begin to fight against an economic system that long ago stopped to deliver the goods to most of the people. Maybe even 99% of the people. And it takes courage. And all of us take our hats off. And if there weren't laws, other articles of clothing off, to show our appreciation for having been able to start a movement that millions of Americans already sympathize with, and in the months to come will join, because the alternative to leave things as they are is no longer tolerable. In that spirit, I want to make an appeal that the people in this movement learn an economic lesson from the last time an economic collapse descended on the United States. So bear with me as I take you through a very short examination of what happened in the 1930s and the lessons for us today. Between 1929 and 1940, American capitalism collapsed. In 1933, the official unemployment rate was 25%. 2.5 times what it is today. That depression lasted over 10 years. We're just in year 4. Don't waste your breath imagining that it'll all be over soon. President Bush promised it would be over soon. And President Obama promised it would be over soon. As to their truth-telling capacities, draw your own conclusions. In the Great Depression, the mass of people took about 4 years to get over the shock of an American capitalism that had promised them everything that they had believed in. They got over the shock that it wasn't true. By 1933, they were ready to act. And boy, did they act. Just a brief summary. In 4 years, 1933 to 1937, 20 million Americans joined the most successful union organizing drive in American history. We've never had anything
We've never had anything
before
or
since like it. In the 1930s as well,
In the 1930s as well,
two political parties became very strong. The Socialist Party and the Communist Party. Together, the unions, the socialists, and the communists put enormous pressure on the government to do something for the suffering unemployed, for the people losing their homes, for the people whose job wages were falling, whose job benefits were falling. To do for the people what people demand today. But the difference was they got it in the 1930s. Just a short list. In the depths of the Depression, when everyone from the president to the big businesses said there was no money. The unions, the socialists, and the communists, we don't care. We know you have the money. We demand programs. And they got them. Number one, Social Security. For those of you who don't know, we never had a Social Security system before. In the middle of the Depression, we created Social Security. Number two, in the middle of the Depression, we created the Unemployment Insurance Program. For the first time in American history, if you were laid off through no fault of your own, you were entitled to insurance. A portion of your salary to help you find other work and to save your family from poverty. Somehow, even though there was no money, the government found all the money. But the best I've left for last. In 1934, the President of the United States, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, went on the radio. There being sadly no TV. And he said to the American people, if the private sector cannot or will not hire tens of millions of Americans, then the federal government must do it. From 1934 to 1941, the federal government created and filled 11 million jobs. At today's population, it would be 25 million jobs. That shows you what can be achieved if people are determined, motivated, and organized. It came to pass because President Roosevelt went to the business community of which he was a part, and to the richest Americans of which he was a part, and he said to them, I'm going to tax you.
I'm going to tax you.
Businesses and rich people.
Businesses and rich people.
And you're gonna pay.
And you're gonna pay.
So I can do these programs.
So I can do these programs.
Because if you don't,
Because if you don't,
there are a lot of other people
there are a lot of other people
in the union,
in the union,
in the Socialist Party,
in the Socialist
in the
Party,
Communist Party,
in the Communist Party,
who are gonna cut you
who are going to cut you
a lot less advantageous deal.
a lot less advantageous deal.
Half of the business community
Half of the business community
broke from the other half,
broke from the other half,
supported Roosevelt.
supported Roosevelt.
And that's how we have
And that's how we have
Social Security,
Social Security,
unemployment insurance,
unemployment insurance,
and the idea
and the idea
in the minds of Americans
in the minds of Americans
that they do not have to accept
that they do not have to accept
a capitalism
a capitalism
that visits disaster on our economy
that visits disaster on our economy
and then pretends to tell us
and then pretends to tell us
there's nothing they can do.
there's nothing they can do.
If you believe that,
If you believe that,
then I will sell you
then I will sell you
the fountain behind us. Here's the lesson I would urge you to learn.
Here's the lesson I would urge you to learn.
The unions,
The unions,
the socialists,
the socialists,
and the communists
and communists
were so excited
were so excited
that they could win
that they could win
Social Security,
Social Security,
unemployment insurance,
unemployment insurance,
11 million jobs,
11 million jobs,
that they accepted that was all they could reasonably hope for.
they could reasonably hope for.
So they made the decision
So they made the decision
to allow corporations
to allow corporations
to continue
to continue
to be organized
to be organized
the way they always had been.
the way they always have been.
At the top,
At the top,
the major shareholder,
the major shareholders,
15 or 20 people
15 or 20 people
who own the enterprise.
who own the enterprise.
Just below them,
Just below them,
a board of directors,
a board of directors,
another 15 or 20 people,
another 15 or 20 people,
selected by the major shareholder,
selected by the major shareholders,
who make all the decisions.
who make all the decisions,
What to produce,
what to produce,
how to produce,
how to produce,
where to produce,
where to produce,
and what to do with the profit.
and what to do with the profits.
The vast mass of people,
The vast mass of people,
the majority,
the majority,
in every corporation,
in every corporation,
are excluded
are excluded
from any participation
from any participation
in making the decisions
in making the decisions
that shape their lives.
that shape their lives.
What to produce,
What to produce,
how to produce,
how to produce,
where to produce,
where to produce,
and what to do with the profits
and what to do with the profits
that their work
that their
creates.
work creates.
A corporation
A corporation
is a fundamentally
is a fundamentally
undemocratic organization.
undemocratic organization.
Democracy
Democracy
and corporation
and corporations
are a contradiction
are a contradiction
in terms.
in terms.
The decisions
The decisions
not to invest,
not to invest,
not to hire millions of Americans,
not to hire millions of
are
Americans,
made by corporations
are made by corporations
in the interest
in the interest
of the profits
of the profits
that are collected
that are collected
by the board of directors
by the board of directors
and the shareholders.
and the shareholders.
In the 1930s,
In the 1930s,
despite winning reforms,
despite winning reforms,
we left the corporations as they were.
we left the corporations as they were.
So no surprise,
the
corporations had every incentive to undo the taxes they had to pay, the regulations they had to follow, the people they had to hire. Not only did they have the incentive, but because we left them collecting all the profits, they could use the profits to undo all the reforms that we won in the 1930s. So we have lost most of the protections. And they have reduced all their taxes. And they're discussing now in Washington reducing Social Security. Here's the lesson. This time, as Occupy Wall Street breaks all records in 1 month, having become a movement across the country, we cannot be satisfied with getting a jobs program or regulating Wall Street. Because if we don't change the way corporations are organized, we will be no more successful than our parents' generation. We will see our good work undone once again by the same corporation who did it to us the first time. First time we let them be, shame on them. If we let them do it again, shame on us. Here's the solution. We need to transform corporate enterprise. To make corporations just as democratic as we want everything else to be. The people who most depend on the decisions of corporations are the people who work there and the people who consume what they produce. Under the rule of democracy, the majority should govern. The majority are the workers and the consumers. Corporations have to be changed. So that the decisions are made democratically by the majority. And we should all say a fond and sincere farewell to the shareholders and the boards of directors. You badly messed up. We don't hold it against you. Go home. Two last points. Some folks find it hard to think about a corporation run by its workers and its consumers. So let me briefly give you two reasons to get over this obstacle. That's holding you back from the progress of your thinking. First, imagine a corporation that worked like this. Monday to Thursday. 9 to 5. You come and you do your particular task. Friday you come.
Friday you come.
You don't do your task.
You don't do your task.
You sit around with the other workers.
You sit around with the other workers.
And with representatives of the consumers and the surrounding community.
And with representatives of the consumers and surrounding community.
And in a democratic way.
And in a democratic way.
You discuss and decide.
You discuss and decide.
What to produce.
What to produce.
How to produce.
How to produce.
Where to produce.
Where to produce.
And what to do with the profits of your work.
And what to do with the profits of your work.
Welcome to a democratic economic system.
Welcome to a democratic economic system.
And say with me.
And say with me.
To the capitalism we inherited.
To the capitalism we inherited.
That has now broken down.
That has now broken down.
The second time in 75 years.
The second time in 75 years.
Go home.
Go home.
The second reason to think this way.
The second reason to think this way.
An historical parable.
An historical parable.
Once upon a time.
Once upon a time.
Human beings believed.
Human beings believed.
That the only way.
That the only way.
To govern a society.
To govern a society.
Was to have a king.
Was to have a king.
Or an emperor.
Or an emperor.
Or a czar.
Or a czar.
Or a kaiser.
Or a kaiser.
You get the picture.
You get the picture.
Then one day.
Then one day.
We got rid of the king.
We got rid of the king.
Either they went home.
Either they went home.
Or they lost their head.
Or they lost their heads.
And guess what?
And guess what?
All the dire predictions.
All the dire predictions.
That society would collapse.
That society would collapse.
If it didn't have a king.
If it didn't have a king.
Turned out to be.
Turned out to be.
I will use a technical term.
I will use a technical term.
Bullshit.
Bullshit.
Second parable.
Second parable.
Once upon a time.
Once upon a time.
It was thought.
It was thought.
That when you reach about your puberty or your adolescence.
That when you reach out your puberty or your adolescence.
And your mind begins to think about those other things.
And your mind begins to think about those other things.
And they include finding a mate.
And they include finding a mate.
It was thought.
It was thought.
That the only way to do that.
That the only way to do that.
Is to have your parents.
Is to have your parents.
Find the right person.
Find the right person.
You were too young.
You were too young.
You didn't have enough life experience.
You didn't have enough life experience.
And your hormones.
And your hormones.
Were doing things.
Were doing things.
We can't discuss.
We can't discuss.
Guess what?
Guess what?
Everyone predicted.
Everyone predicted.
That if you allowed young people.
That if you allowed young people.
To go out.
To go out.
And figure this process out.
And figure this process
on their
out.
own.
On their own.
And find their partner.
And find their partner.
Civilization wouldn't end.
Civilization
The world wouldn't collapse.
The world wouldn't collapse.
The family wouldn't disappear.
The family wouldn't disappear.
I got news for you.
I got news for you.
If we get rid of the board of directors.
If we get rid of the board of directors.
If we get rid of the major shareholders.
If we get rid of the major shareholders.
The machines will still be there.
The machines will still be there.
The factory will not move.
The factory will not move.
The workers will have all the skills.
The workers will have all the skills.
We will produce just fine.
We will produce just fine.
And for the first time.
And for the first time.
The mass of people.
The mass of people.
The 99%.
The 99%.
Who work for a living.
Who work for a living.
Will organize production.
Will organize production.
So it's meaningful.
So it's meaningful.
So it's safe.
So it's safe.
So it is profitable for us.
So it is profitable for us.
And not for 1%.
And not for 1%.
That is what the people of the world.
That is what the people of the world
want.
Want.
It is what's being held back.
It is what's being held back
by a capitalist system.
By a capitalist system.
I say capitalist.
I say capitalist.
Because that's its name.
Because that's its name.
And to get beyond it.
And to get beyond it.
We have to name it.
We have to name it.
But we have the people.
But we have the people.
We have the plan.
We have the plan.
And the obstacle.
And the obstacle.
Is a tiny minority.
Is a tiny minority.
That make the prospects.
That make the prospects.
Very good.
Very good.
What we needed.
What we needed.
All of us.
All of us.
Was some core.
With some core.
Of people.
Of people.
To be the spark.
To be the spark.
That's what you are.
That's what you are.
And on behalf of the majority of the American people.
And on behalf of the majority of the American people.
Thank you.
Thank you.